Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Socratic Forum for Thought. I am Jersey Flight. Marcus Crassus was an emperor of Rome. He was known to store his riches across the land. He built a large wall enclosure with 2 large gates and told his most loyal general to guard it with his very life. The general had no knowledge of what was behind the wall. "You must hold this line," the emperor said. Wild beasts came from the forest, but the general held his line. Barbarians stormed the wall, but the general held his line. And to his great dismay, even his own men, comrades, and friends turned against him. "Why would you guard the riches of such a greedy man as the emperor?" they said. "You would place your life on the line for a cruel king?" And so they attacked the general and pierced his side. But he held his line. And beating them off, he fell to his knees wounded. He began to question himself. Why am I protecting this wall? Better to destroy it. For how much have I suffered for this thing? I have lost everything for this thing. Before I die, I will bring it down myself. But just then, he heard the horn of the emperor echo in the distance. Marcus Crassus approached the dying general. "You have done well, my friend," he said. "You have held your line." The general looked up in dismay and murmured, "I have done nothing. My life has been a waste. I have held this line for only the cause of your greed." The emperor motioned to his men and said, "Open the gates." And there, before the general, behind the wall, stood the children of Rome. "No, my dear man," said the emperor, "you have protected the future of Rome by saving the lives of its children. If you did not hold your line, the wall would have been destroyed and all these children with it." The general gripped his sword and stared meaningfully into the infinite sky. He took his last breath and passed away. What is this thought of holding one's line? What does it take to stand up for principles? The ocean swells against the mariner, but he points his ship onward, against the violence and force of the waves. I submit to you that we are lacking courage in our time. We are lacking men and women who are willing to hold their line. And we are not merely talking about following the orders of a dictator, or giving in to the whims of authority. We are talking about principles on the basis of thought, values which are crucial to thought itself. We hear many voices, but see very little conviction. From the shores of the east to the shores of the west, to the oceans in the north, to the oceans in the south, there is virtue. But what is the justification and ground of this virtue? What is the basis of compassion? Philosophers have attacked these principles on the basis of reason, by the virtue of selfishness, as one enlightened woman put it. But such a dialectic misses the aesthetic force of these principles. For these principles have the same source of vindication and the same source of justification as that of Michelangelo's statues or Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. That is to say, my dear friends, there is beauty in virtue. There is beauty in compassion. And it is this aesthetic quality that gives these values their place among us as great works of art. For art is not only external, but there is also an art of being, an art of integrity which exists on the inside. A man or woman is an artist of life. At every moment, we must decide what kind of artists we want to be. The purpose of this forum is to provide a place for thinkers to connect with other thinkers, an atmosphere for the discussion of ideas. There are no masters here, no gurus, no infallible teachers, but only the force of the question. This forum always follows the same format. There is a short reading, followed by a short lecture, followed by an informal conversation. We are here to talk among ourselves. The point of this forum is not the lecture, but the interaction of community. The podium here is open to all those who attend this meeting consistently. If you would like to give a lecture or do a reading, please let us know. Today's reading comes from the Dialogues of Alfred North Whitehead, as recorded by Lucian Price. At the age of 19, when he went up to Cambridge University, that is Whitehead, he was already a good mathematician. The method of instruction at Cambridge in those days was largely Platonic, free discussion among friends. And he has said that he learned as much from conversation as from books. Once, when he was asked how he was able to write Science in the Modern World, one chapter each week, during the academic year while carrying his regular teaching schedule at Harvard, he replied, "Everything in the book had been talked over for the previous 40 years. He becomes a Fellow of Trinity in 1885 at the ripe age of 24. Trinity College, Cambridge, one of the most splendid educational foundations on earth. And now comes the great experience in which he found that rare jewel, true humility. For the previous 2 centuries, it had been comfortably supposed that Sir Isaac Newton had discovered the laws of physics, of the physical universe forever. Then befell the thing. Let me try to quote Whitehead's own words as nearly as I can remember. We supposed that nearly everything of importance about physics was known. Yes, there were a few obscure spots, strange anomalies having to do with the phenomena of radiation, which physicists expected to be cleared up by 1900. They were. But in so being, the whole science blew up, and the Newtonian physics, which had been supposed to be fixed as the everlasting seat, were gone. Oh, they were and still are useful as a way of looking at things, but regarded as a final description of reality, no longer valid. Certitude was gone. It still is. But how many others have learned? This collapse of certitude, where certitude was supposed to be least assailable, affected his thinking for the rest of his days. Gone was the everlasting seat. Yet he noticed how repeatedly even men of science themselves who knew this story would come forward with discoveries in the tone of, "Now at last, we have certitude." In due season, he formulated his reply. The universe is vast. Nothing is more curious than the self-satisfied dogmatism with which mankind at each period of its history cherishes the delusion of the finality of its existing modes of knowledge. Skeptics and believers are all alike. At this moment, scientists and skeptics are the leading dogmatists. Advance in detail is admitted. Fundamental novelty is barred. This dogmatic common sense is the death of philosophical adventure. The universe is vast. We thus arrive at what he termed the fallacy of dogmatic finality. It is one of the least popular of his doctrines. When tried out in conversation or in the public prints, its heresy is sensed with astonishing celerity. For people who do not know what it is that they don't like, do know that they don't like it.